Hi, I'm Greg Mazdrid, and this is my podcast on trends of development of humanity. Today, here with me is Ashley Dudarenok, founder of ChoZan and Alarice, China digital expert and best-selling author, LinkedIn top voice, Asia top 25 innovators, guru on digital marketing by Thinkers 50, Young Business Leader of the Year 2021, and just a fascinating person that I would love to talk to and to mine insights about China, about the future of the world, marketing, and many other things. Hi, Ashley. Thanks for joining in.
Woohoo! Hey, Greg. Thank you so much. What an introduction.
Doing my best. So you have quite an interesting biography. So you're originally, like myself, from Russia, from Russian Far East, and you got to China in 2006. So it was a different country back then, with Hu Jintao as a chairman. How would you compare those two countries, China now, 2023, and China from 2006?
Well, as you said, these are two different countries, just like the world. 10 years back, it was a different world. And just like you yourself, 10 years ago, you were a different man. The only constant is change. So China is, of course, changing. And what we see is that China is also changing at the China speed, which is extremely, extremely fast. The COVID has accelerated it even further. So in the past 3 years, the changes are even more profound. So when it comes to, as you said, my background, I was born in the far east of Russia, very close to the China border. So I had an opportunity to observe China when it was just opening up to the kind of Western world, and it was still a manufacturing hub of the world. And throughout my whole kind of childhood and early adulthood, we actually, being in the borders of China, we would go and buy everything, daily necessities across the border from a place called Sufenhe, just a little basically village that later on turned into a trade center. So everything from shampoo to jeans, etc. So basically from the time when I first visited China, when I was probably like 7 or 8 years old, to the time when I moved to China when I was 17 years old in 2006, to the time where I am right now in China, these are indeed three different countries. And to say what has changed, well, first of all, everything is a generalization because China is such a big country. What changed in Mongolia, and what changed in Guangdong are completely different things. But if we generalize, I would say it definitely became a lot more digital and more focused with a clear vision of what this digital reality is like. So we know that, we hear that all the time. Like if a foreigner, let's say, decides to, right now the borders are open, and if you get a visa, you decide to fly to Shanghai, good luck. You will not be able to take a cab from airport to your hotel if you don't have an app, if you don't have Didi, if you don't have basically access to some of the digital payments. Right now, of course, there are some tourist apps, but in the past 3 years, there were no tourists, so all of them are extremely difficult to use. But basically, it's extremely digital. From, the cities to when you're in a hotel or in the office, little robots are serving you and bringing you your shopping from downstairs. To the fact that the delivery guys that actually carry your, groceries and stuff like that, they actually wear those assist suits that make them carry heavier stuff. So it's very, very digital. Number two, China has definitely in the past 10 years become a lot more focused on China chic, or we call it China pride, or we can call it patriotism in one way or the other, basically becoming a lot more proud, right? Back in the day, I remember when I first, again, as a child, traveled, outside of Russia, and then we visited 3 countries. We visited Japan, we visited Korea, South Korea, and China. And Koreans were proud doing what they were doing. Japanese had all these great quirky products. And made in China was just never really cool. Everybody thought that this is really cheap, really bad, it's going to break, but I'm going to buy another one and just, get it out. And even Chinese back then, they wanted foreign products, be it anything, be it a toothpaste or, some food products later on, or buying foreign jeans and stuff like that. So right now, definitely a huge change. Chinese are proud of not just country, not just their heritage, not just their history, but also proud of the products and how they contribute to this, to this world and to themselves. Just recently, I had actually, please stop me if I'm blabbering too much, but
this is fascinating. Continue.
Just recently, I was speaking with a colleague of mine, and we were talking about the Korean wave, like all the K products and, K fashion and K beauty and K pop and K dramas. And in China, there's a huge downturn in popularity of K products, and there's many reasons. Major reason probably is that in 2017, there was a political tension between the two countries. And back in 2022-23, there was a further development onto this kind of unfriendly treatment of Chinese and Koreans and vice versa. So it's very, very important to have proper country branding in China in order to be successful with consumers. But what I wanted to say is that back in 2020, there was a survey which basically looked at top-tier city consumers. And they said that around 79% of consumers back then, just 3 years ago, used a Korean product. So they bought Korean products 5 years prior to that. Almost 80%, or 79% of consumers. And then in 2023, in January, just a few months ago, they did the same survey. It was actually run by a Korean center because Korea is basically very curative about their country branding, right? They invest a lot in how they are perceived. So the survey showed that only about 40% of people have used and bought Korean products. And why? So a colleague of mine was saying that another reason, apart from the political tension, is that Chinese domestic products, when it comes to skincare, cosmetics, on body, in body, snacks, fashion, etc., just is very good quality. And we want to support kind of a domestic, manufacturer. So more digital, definitely more China chic. Number 3, we definitely see a lot more presence of government and governance. And you started with it. Yeah, you said it was Hu Jintao. Right now we have Xi Jinping. And definitely the whole feeling is different. With Hu Jintao, everybody was focusing on business. It was just hoorah, go ahead, everything is possible. There was this genuine feeling of being invincible, completely invincible, because in China back then, you could always do whatever you wanted to do in terms of business. Like if somebody tells you, oh no, we don't know how to do it, there's a regulation, blah, 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 you say, okay, I understand, but how can we make it happen? And then you will together find a way. So there was always a way to basically grow, do business, etc. Right now, the tides have changed. Right now, there's definitely a very strong presence. So this is where the country going. That's what Xi Jinping kind of mindset and the whole thought process is. And you just align yourself with it. That's the reality of that market. But also, of course, a few things remain the same. I cannot say that not the same, but similar, right? China is still full of enthusiasm. People are quite optimistic in general compared to the rest of the world. There's definitely China's speed. Everything is done very fast. The fact that the Chinese professionals and entrepreneurs still have a very entrepreneurial mindset is also still there. So things change, but also kind of in the background, they kind of also retain some of its energy.
Yeah, great insights. When you mentioned the Chinese speed, I immediately remembered the COVID period when several of the large Chinese IT companies, I think, rolled out significant updates for video conferencing within like a couple of months. And Western companies were lagging behind terribly. That impressed me very much when I started digging deeper into that. You also mentioned the specifics of Chinese customers. The Chinese market that you need to bear in mind when trying to conquer it, because this is like a sweet spot, and many international brands dream of breaking into the Chinese market, winning the hearts of the Chinese audience. Also, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but still, you know that I, as a originally Russian influencer, started going international with my English language podcasts, blogs, TikToks, and now I'm learning Chinese to, in future, maybe try to become a Chinese-speaking influencer, and we'll discuss that also. I'd love to get some insights from you on that. Let's start with just international brands, not like an influencer, because this is just a specific case, but let's imagine some international brand that's trying to enter the Chinese market. You, in some of the posts and videos of yourself that I saw, you said that such such companies are usually facing, I guess, three main hurdles, obstacles: culture, Chinese culture, quantity over quality problem, and the platforms itself. Could you please go a little bit in detail on those three areas? Let's start with culture, because obviously everyone knows that the Chinese are like not just foreigners to Westerners, but some Westerners think they are like aliens. They are completely different in many things. For many Westerners, this is hard to grasp. How exactly the Chinese culture differs from the Western culture? What would you mention as the most important points to mention here?
I need to start answering that question with a disclaimer. I'm not a sinologist. When I came to mainland China back in 2005, 6, or before that, and maybe a few years after, a lot of foreigners that relocated to China for the purpose of studies, they were sinologists, meaning they studied the culture, the language, and all that. I studied business and economics. I'm a business person. I studied linear algebra and higher mathematics too, together with Chinese students, rather than Chinese culture. My experience, of course, is in the China business market, and that is why I can speak from my experience and share that. And the second disclaimer is that today I am actually a naturalized Chinese. So I am no longer Russian, and I cannot refer to them and us, right? I am a naturalized Chinese. And of course, China is a very diverse place, right? There's 56 national minorities. Whenever we try to kind of generalize Chinese culture, it becomes very difficult and troublesome because there's so many different cultures. It's just a little bit like in Russia, right? In post-Soviet, basically Soviet Union, there were, I think, 123 national minorities. I mean, try to think about that as one collection of, a group of people. But important thing is, number one, it's 5,000 years history. So the culture is extremely deeply rooted into everything. Like when we think about a character, just a character descriptor, each character has a lot of background. Where is it coming from? Was it mentioned in a book 3,000 years ago? Has Emperor XYZ used this character to scold his general? I do not know. And we just cannot comprehend very often in the kind of Western setup. It's very difficult to comprehend how deeply rooted it is in everything. Number two, in my experience, Chinese culture is also very philosophical. So, we talk about the Russian soul, right? We talk about Tolstoy, and we talk about, all these great thinkers of the day. I would say that Chinese are even deeper than that a lot, right? So these philosophical discussions and this kind of philosophical view on life, but very pragmatic. So it's philosophical, but when it comes to day, they are extremely pragmatic. Right? So as you see this kind of conflict in some ways, right? Then Chinese are extremely collective because they love harmony. So we do not want to create waves and, ripple effect and, bother other people. But at the same time, right now, a lot of young people and even, for example, silver-haired generation, the older consumers from, let's say, lower tier cities, they're also extremely individualistic. I'm very collectivist in certain things, and I'm very individualistic in others. What can you do when you approach this market? Be it, as you said, relocating to this market, learning a language, changing your nationality, becoming Chinese, or launching a business there, selling a product. You need to understand, number one, China is very diverse and very different. From Urumqi to Guangdong to Shandong, it's a different country. It's like a collection of little places. It's like Europe. And number two, you need to be humble. You need to learn and create together. So this is kind of, very basic. It's actually good for any new market. It doesn't matter whether you're entering India or you're entering Germany or entering China. But
it's good for life in general.
Yeah, exactly. So just be humble and ask people questions and create together. Like get yourself the, Chinese colleagues and launch with them what your, let's say, blogger business or your product business is going to look like. Yeah, get the right help and be humble and go get them. It's not scary. It's really, really fun because you are adding so much depth onto also yourself when you are in that market. You are learning and just expanding.
Thanks for the advice. Also, I think we can get to the second obstacle that you mentioned, the quantity over quality problem when entering the Chinese market. That has something to do with the amount of brands, the number of brands, and the amount of content, the amount of stuff going on in China.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is actually, when it comes to quality versus quantity, you need to be not on all platforms. Like when it comes to social media, of course, you need to be at select platforms. China is extremely expensive market. So you need to invest a lot for a chance to win a little. And once you know what works, you optimize the platform. So that is why, again, you just need to be very, very selective. But when it comes to, for example, publishing your content, you need to still deliver the quantity, but it needs to be above the minimal threshold of quantity. So I think it's really quite not unique. There are a few things that are unique about China. For example, when it comes to promotions and marketing and campaigns, you need to put a face on your promotion. So you cannot just give put a pen against the white background and sell a pen. You need to show the face that somebody, or Ashley or Greg, are holding the pen. So that's unique. Yeah. You also cannot just do branding. A lot of brands that enter China, they say, oh, let me just do branding. Just do, okay, this is my mood board. This is the direction where I want to go. Oh, this is the color. This is the feel and touch. That's all great. Must be done. But there also needs to be a very strong sales push. For example, this coupled with live streaming, which purely introduces the product, this is the pen, the feature, and of course, just closes the deal. And of course, you need to move very, very fast as well in that market, because things kind of evolve fast, and most brands know that they need to be fast, but they can't. They just can't do it because of their external structures. So yeah, quality over quantity needs to find the right balance.
Yeah, moving fast is, I think, extremely important in the current world. But when I look at China, I understand that we are not moving fast enough in comparison. So the third thing that you mentioned, and we already started talking about it to some extent, is the platform and the vast array of them in China. So when I started researching the social networks in China, I've come across lots of them. So there's like several Instagrams, several different kinds of live streaming platforms, several competitors of something like Twitter analogs. I don't remember the names, but I was impressed, and I didn't even know where to start. And also there is a problem that you don't have the ability to use them unless you were inside China or you have a SIM card. So this is like an additional barrier. What do I need to understand about social networks of China as a brand or as a blogger, in my case, to succeed?
Well, to increase your chances for success, you need to know that there's a lot of stuff going on with a very specific audience in mind. For example, if you're after people that are into collectibles or sneakers, then you go after a platform called outside of China, I think it's called Poison. It's basically a traded platform for branded trainers, right, in China, and sneakers. But they also have other products. Then if you are into fitness or let's say traveling, right, then or luxury or even like financial services for upscale individuals, then your platform is red, Xiaohongshu, and that is also very female focused, but they are making decisions for the whole household. If
this
you
is the small red book, right?
Little red book.
HSK too. Yes.
Woo, Xiaohongshu, yes. No, you're doing a fantastic job. So basically there are platforms that focus on a specific audience, and you need to explore a few of these platforms that are closest to your audience, and then pick one or two maximum that work and really invest into them. Invest into content, invest into whatever other boosting. That's, I think, what you need to know. If I could give a little glossary of the important platforms that I would say, obviously WeChat. It's just because everybody is on WeChat, but it's more of a operating system for life in China rather than a social media app. It has a lot of social functions, but the purpose for you to go there is not to enjoy social media. Weibo is a platform that essentially helps you track news and celebrity gossip and stuff like this. It's like a Facebook plus Twitter plus a bit of Instagram together. It was kind of going down a couple of years back. Right now it's a little bit back. So it is a little bit kind of going out of fashion, but cannot die. It's like the, I don't know if you guys ever had, I have a dog also, and the dog is like 15, 16 years old, and you just look at it and you love him so much and you hope that he is never, ever going to die. But you just know, when is the last day? So it's a little bit like this. Weibo really is still trying to find its way back into love. Then, of course, Xiaohongshu made a really big comeback after they had some regulatory issues a few years back. So they are very, very strong in curated content, bloggers in, as I said, women-related kind of topics and products. Douyin is the Chinese version of TikTok. Yeah. But I would say in China, TikTok is really not about social media. It is a very successful social commerce platform where they are great at converting sales. They actually sell snacks, they sell beauty products, they sell fashion, they sell your next sneaker. They're very good at it. They convert through short videos and they convert, of course, through live streaming. So they made this transition. In the West, they tried to go into that direction and they're still figuring out their way. And then I said, of course, there's niche platforms. I mean, there's still Douyin, it's about books, because I know that you are all about, books and reading. Yeah, there's, and I said, Douyin and many, 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 many others.
Yeah, with TikTok, they're figuring out not just the way to live stream and sell goods, but also to not get banned in the US, which I'm hoping they won't, because they have 130,000 subscribers, most of whom are from the USA. So fingers crossed. This could be very ironic. Live in Russia, where platforms were banned, to get your American TikTok banned as well. So just out of curiosity, I'm not intending to turn this into a consultation session with you. This is still a podcast, but I think my listeners and viewers might be interested as well. So I'm a TikToker, among other things, and podcast host. So as a TikToker, I should definitely be trying to go to Douyin and to try to produce content there. Am I right? Or are there any other alternatives that I should be considering? Because with TikTok, for example, in the Western market, I produce those short form vertical videos and I distribute them to TikTok, to Instagram Reels, and to YouTube Shorts. How does the distribution system work with the Chinese vertical short form content? Obviously, I'm far from the Chinese level necessary to produce this content, but I'm thinking in advance and I'm trying to learn as fast as I can.
Well, I would say if you go to Douyin, definitely you can apply a lot of learnings that you have on TikTok into that platform. It's just a lot more. It's like, think about TikTok as this skinny, stripped down version of Douyin. Douyin has a lot more features. But as a foreign creator on Chinese platforms, you need to get a permission. You need to be registered. So that's another hurdle. Your Chinese needs to be good enough. Or if you are to speak, let's say, a foreign language, then you need to get registered. Like, they need to know what are you talking about there on these platforms. So the platform needs to vet you. And in order to get vetted, you also need to basically get, as I said, permission. Because in China, and that's what also a lot of people don't kind of realize, in China, it's not just an individual creator who is responsible for the content that he or she puts out, but also a platform. So if I allowed Greg onto my platform, then Greg goes off the rails and talks about, I do not know what, on the platform, which is against, let's say, certain guidelines, then I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get fined as a platform, and they're going to take me off, for instance, the iTunes, and there's no new downloads, and basically my business is going to suffer. And that's what happened before with a lot of platforms, including Xiaohongshu. Xiaohongshu had a big scandal, Xiaohongshu being red, right? They had a big scandal where Chinese market has discovered aesthetic beauty. So basically all these medical procedures, kind of, also plastic surgery. And Xiaohongshu just had a lot of advertising, not just advertising, but basically bloggers publishing about it. And some of these clinics were unregistered clinics. So people would go, do a procedure, have a problem, and then report it. So basically Xiaohongshu got in trouble because of that. Not because they did something wrong, but because the bloggers there were not reliable and basically were spreading, all this kind of fake news, we can say. To go back to your question, I think definitely Douyin is one platform. Another platform that you shall consider is called Bilibili, for sure. It is very powerful when it comes to knowledge sharing, learning, thinking, interacting, right? It's all about bullet point comments. Like you have a video and people basically just comment on screen. And the videos are a bit longer, so they go typically 20 to 30 minutes, but very impactful among the young people and young professionals. Another platform you might consider if you want to get into more kind of entertaining and more aspirational trend. Basically, if you want to get more organic push, then you go to Kuaishou. Kuaishou is very low market, like kind of it goes into like third tier, fourth tier cities. So you need to be a bit more down to earth. You need to be a bit more kind of funny. You need to be a bit more connected with, they have these 7 big families, we call them, right? The family is basically, it's like a mafia, It's like a mafia on Kuaishou. Yeah. These are bloggers that then kind of raise their own bloggers and they become one.
Like TikTok houses
like
or clans.
Collective or a house, but these are individuals. What's different? It's not an MCN. It's not a multi-channel network. In China, we call companies that actually help bloggers succeed MCNs, right? They train you, you cross-promote with each other. No, these are individuals that build their own kind of network. So you need to also obviously have relationship with them. So it's a little bit tribal, I would say, but nonetheless, Kuaishou is very organic. So you might consider. And of course, Red, I think Red, if you want female audience, if you are talking about some kind of step-by-step guide, you can also break them down into text and put some videos in. Red is also rather organic and it has very big boost towards your SEO. Whatever people do, they will see Red in search results very, very frequently, much more so than, let's say, Douyin.
Yeah, so that's already some alternatives also to consider. Obviously, I will get to business closer to the date when I'm in China, and I will research all of those and boost my efforts of learning Chinese as well as learning Chinese platforms. It's very interesting that with the American discussion of Section 230, I think it's called, regarding the liability of platforms for the content produced by the creators. It's interesting that the Chinese have already solved this question. I'm sure someday in the US, the stance of the regulators will be similar, because the trend kind of seems like towards tightening the regulations.
The whole digital world, absolutely, it needs to be brought into some order. We all agree there needs to be order, but there is a lot of pushback from obviously those that say, but order also comes with surveillance and it comes with a lot of risks. It does, but what is better? I mean, we all have a passport, right? Our governments, doesn't matter where we live, be it the US or Germany or in that sense China, has a record of who we are, where we were born, what school did we go to, and are we married, are we divorced, etc. They probably have access to our half of our life. So in China there's discussions about introducing the universal ID as well, where you need to and in a lot of services you already need to verify your identity and have this kind of ID when you interact in the digital world. And especially as we develop into some blended reality with virtual world and physical world coming together one way or another, be it metaverse or whatever other buzzword we want or don't want to use, blended in with AI and all these new models that are right now trending. Ultimately, we will have to find a way to identify people online.
Yeah, well, as a Web3 enthusiast and evangelist, I believe in the blockchain to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Like Vitalik Buterin's suggestions to create soul-bound tokens. Maybe we'll see something like that, because I'm not like an anarchist, but I don't trust any government enough to have this kind of ultimate power to control everything. But we will see what will unfold in China and in other parts of the world. Also, I wanted to ask about podcasts. Do the Chinese listen to podcasts? And how common is that?
Chinese do listen to podcasts, but I would say it's less now than it was in the first year of pandemic in 2020. There was a huge blow in that market. There's a platform called Himalaya, which is Himalayas, in direct translation, where there are courses, there are podcasts, there's all that stuff there. And people still want to learn, but right now videos and even like Douyin, when it comes to learning something, and listening to inspiration. So what does Douyin provide? It's basically education, inspiration, and sales and entertainment, of course, right? So videos are kind of taken over, but there are a lot of use cases still for audio in China.
Well, when I'm speaking about podcasts, I'm speaking also about video podcasts, like this one, by the way. If you guys are listening to this in the audio version, check out the YouTube channel Greg Mazdrid and subscribe. So, who's the Joe Rogan of China, or I don't know, the Lex Friedman of China? Who's the most well-known podcast host of the I don't know, intellectual, high-earning audience? Is there one?
I don't think there is one. I mean, I'm following a couple of guys that are absolutely phenomenal in my field. There's a dude that's an entrepreneur, and I don't think that the name will ring any bells outside of China. But I'm following the dude who's built businesses for the past 20 years, and basically on his Douyin channel, he also has his Himalaya courses and stuff. But on his Douyin channel, he has snapshots of his offline events where he goes into the business case. He calculates in his head and he gives this business advice on what do you need to do next to basically scale up your business. He's fantastic. I'm listening to the other lady who was her whole life, and she's also very, very local Chinese. She was in sales, and she was in insurance, and she was in finance, and she was whatever. She's fantastic when it comes to leadership. She basically can dissect what are people doing wrong with other people in relation to professional world. So what I want to say is that, of course, there are big names. I mean, before the collapse of Jack Ma, when he went out of favor, a lot of people loved listening to Lei Jun, right? A lot of people loved listening to Jack Ma. Now, a lot of people love to listen to these big names from big companies and, get their wisdom, especially people they respect, right, in different fields. Right now, mostly in terms of the audio time, right, in terms of how much you actually spend listening and learning from someone, it's very niche. It's very niche. So you find somebody who really speaks to you or helps you solve your specific problem, and then you go deep dive into that. But yes, if you're interested in a couple of names for a specific topic, do let me know. I'm going to throw you a list. I'm going to get my team on it.
Yeah, thanks. And also we'll give the links to these guys in the description of the video and the audio versions of podcasts for everyone interested. Because I know that my podcast has a very diverse audience. Some of them are also from Hong Kong, which is the place you are at right now.
And if you guys speak Chinese, exactly. If you speak Chinese, you will be able to enjoy it.
Yeah, so maybe this will also be useful for me for language learning purposes. Okay, let's speak more about the trends of China. When I think about cities like Hong Kong or Shanghai, I'm thinking about cities of the future, and this is a cliche, but they really are. It's no wonder that in the movie Her by Spike Jonze, with this artificial intelligence Siri falling in love with Joaquin Phoenix's character, the city of the future portrayed is Shanghai, actually, because it looks like one, and Hong Kong also very futuristic. But it's not just the looks, but the insides, the way that the Chinese interact with technology. Many things that are not obvious and not part of life for Westerners are commonplace in China. Which would you, by the way, provide as examples of this? Like you mentioned, for example, the widespread penetration of WeChat in the daily life. Like it's the go-to app for doing everything. Many of our viewers and listeners will say, well, what it's just an app for payments and for chatting. What's so special about it? So what's so special about WeChat?
A long question. Let me break it down into two bits. One is about the Chinese cities, and the second one is about what's cool about WeChat. When it comes to Chinese cities and digitalization within them, first of all, Hong Kong is super duper old school. I mean, it has its charm, and I am a big fan of Hong Kong. That's why I chose it as my home base. But I love that my offices are also located at both Shanghai and Shenzhen, because Hong Kong is extremely old school. It's no longer a city of neon lights, but it is a city of beautiful nature. It is the city of finance, of a lot of vibrant energy, fantastic food, and. Now, when it comes to mainland Chinese cities, of course, we have a few that we must mention. First of all, Shanghai. Shanghai, of course, is the fashion capital. It's the finance capital. It's not the most international city in China, but when it comes to professional foreigners, it is the most professional foreigners kind of place in China. Even though during the pandemic, 50 to 60% of foreigners escaped China. And right now we are in dire straits there. A good friend of mine just flew in this week from Shanghai, and he said it's like a desert when it comes to places where the foreigners used to hang out. But nonetheless, Shanghai is very focused on digitizing itself. And like, what can you see in Shanghai? First of all, as you arrive, let's say in the airport, you will be able to, actually it's in Guangdong airport, but in Shanghai, I'm not sure whether they do something so cool. In Guangdong airport, we actually have holograms that welcome you. And the hologram is bowing and saying, foreigners to the left or Chinese citizens to the right. So it's really cool, kind of course, buzz, nothing special, but it's cool. In Shanghai airport, just like in many other airports, you will also be able to see the digital screen that will be able to recognize your face. So it's facial recognition. You don't need to scan any of your boarding passes. You just come to the session, right? And this section shows you, okay, your flight is leaving for Turkey in 3 hours. You're right now here. You need to go to the left in order to get there, which is really, really cool. And then, as I said, when you get on the cab, in Shanghai, there's no driverless vehicles, but in many places, for example, Xiang'an, there's a city next to Beijing. It's a city that was built for the future of mobility. There are real road tests for driverless vehicles. So you're able to just come up to the stand, scan the QR code, driverless vehicle arrives, you get in the car, and it gets you to where you want to go. This is not available in Shanghai, I want to highlight yet, but nonetheless, there are cities in China where this is already commercially available. Another thing in Shanghai, the moment you are in your hotel, a good friend of mine, the one that just came from Shanghai, said, okay, he entered the hotel room and he can't find a switch. So he's walking around and looking for that switch, and he calls the front desk and says, oh my God, what's happening? And the lady says, just talk to basically your in-house Siri, right? So to say, to this speech assistant. And then he said, dim the light, and the light dimmed. Switch on the TV.
Whoa.
that is, and this is not in just one or two hotels. It's very, very common. And at home, people also have smart home software installed. Not everybody, but middle class and up, many are running their home on Xiaomi. What else? And then again, the little robots bring you stuff. For example, as you sit in the little coffee shop or having your lunch or dinner, you can't even come up to the person and say, oh, please take my order. There's a QR code glued on your table. Then you need to have WeChat or, Alipay to check out and to pay for it. But ultimately, you scan the QR code, you have the menu, you choose what you want, you add what you don't want, you pay for it, you sit and wait, and then little robot with your noodles, comes out of the kitchen, stops, you pick up your noodles, it's gone. That kind of version of the future. You know, when I was little and I was traveling abroad for the first time, literally I was in Japan. This was, I think, my first overseas trip. And I saw an escalator. It was like a moving stairs. I thought this was a spaceship. And also I saw the doors and the automatic doors, and they would just open and close. It was like a spaceship. So right now, a lot of foreigners that have not been in China for some time, when they arrive, they just literally feel that this is the future. This is really strange. Some find it utopian, others dystopian, but that's what it is. So Shanghai is important. Another important place is Shenzhen. Shenzhen is focusing a lot on green mobility. They have, I believe, if not 100, that 90+% of their public transport running on renewable energy and technology. They have a lot of driverless tests, etc., etc. Just like Shanghai, they are also building the clone of their city in the metaverse in order to organize traffic, in order to organize like basically city operations virtually first in the metaverse through a digital clone and later on apply it in real life. Of course, Shenzhen has their giants. They have Tencent, that's the tech giant that's backing a lot of that development and implementation. They also have Huawei as another giant. So yeah, it's a great place to visit for smart city. Another important place is Chengdu, right in the center of China, very close to Chongqing. Chongqing is very close to my heart because this is the place where I studied. And Chengdu is the go-to place when it comes to entertainment and creativity and building bloggers and MCNs and whatever. So Greg, if you are ready to relocate to China, to really learn the language and to really be, part of this whole big picture, I would strongly recommend not go to Shenzhen or Beijing or Shanghai. Go to Chengdu because the creators of the future, the MCNs that are right now selling volumes, the entertainers of the future, like famous actors, etc., they come out of that environment. And it's very vibrant and it's very creative. It's very cool. Nearing city, Chongqing is right now focusing a lot on actually building supercomputer capabilities. They have a lot of science parks and they really focus on this AI. It's not yet, I cannot say that I see that technology implemented in the city at that extent, but in Chongqing, for example, when you drive close to the department store and you just stop there to drop it, let's say your friend, you receive a notification because there's these little beacons, there's these little sensors on the side road, and they interact with your car. They know that this is your WeChat, this is you. So there's a WeChat notification that pops up on your phone saying that if you're not going to move within the next 30 seconds, you're going to get a fine. So it's not yet mind-blown, man. But it is connected. It's getting into that direction when it comes to, Chongqing as well. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool cities in China. And if you're into tourism, I would also recommend checking out Changsha. They focus a lot on the night economy where basically the city doesn't sleep until like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And even the police stations are hopefully working 24/7. But even the government offices are working till like 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night. Which is very unusual, and Changsha is becoming a big tourist destination domestically, and I think for international tourists as well. So if you are in tourism tech, go see what's possible there.
I've heard about most cities that you mentioned, but still lots of new info and examples of how WeChat influences your life. One of which was with parking and fine. This is maybe not a big deal, but still impressive.
WeChat in that respect is, as I said, is an operating system for life in China. Sometimes when I speak about WeChat, I sound like a salesperson on commission. So I'm not affiliated to WeChat in any ways. I'm not trying to sell this app. But what you need to understand for those outside of China mainland is that there is a WeChat international version, which is again a skinny, stripped down version of WeChat app. And there is Weixin, the actual original Chinese app that can only be obtained if you have a Chinese number And essentially, you verify also your identity. You link it with your bank account that is from mainland China. And then you get access to all these mini programs, right? You get access to all these features. So the app that you're looking at and you're saying, nothing impressive, it's not the app that we are talking about. In the country, it's literally like the whole app store that you can imagine or that you're using is within that app, right? Through mini programs. App. Yeah, it is a super app. And I like Alipay as well. Actually, Ant Financial is investing quite a lot into turning Alipay into more social platform, into a more, not just transactional, but more kind of hangout place. They are partly succeeding, especially in the corporate world. A lot of companies are switching and using Alipay-related softwares and DingTalk as their company preferred communication tool instead of WeChat Work. So both of them are important, but WeChat is just so easy and the habit is already there. So for small transactions, for small pains that you have in your life, order something, go somewhere, queue somewhere, call, chat, it's all WeChat. So you spend quite a lot of time on WeChat. And of course, reading the accounts, it's a little bit like news digest from those that you are following, more like curated stuff that you receive on your phone directly.
Looking forward to getting their bank accounts in China in order to see for myself. Let's get to the hottest topic as of today: ChatGPT, large language models, chatbots. You've written a bunch about that recently, and I wanted to ask you your opinion, given the strict public regulations. Do you think we'll see a rise of the Chinese ChatGPT-like systems in the near future? I've spoken on my podcast with a Chinese writer, Stanley Chen, a sci-fi writer who used AI for writing his texts, some of his texts, but he's written some early era LLM. Now they've definitely evolved, but we don't see yet the global popularity of some Chinese produced LLMs. Will there be any that could compete with Western products?
In my opinion, first of all, ChatGPT is also invested by a Chinese company, right? So even though right now in today's world, in my professional experience, we are living in the most hostile environment ever when it comes to China versus the West, right? Anything that is vaguely reported in a neutral or positive light about China is basically just doesn't happen because it's a political suicide. So we live in a very, very divided, very charged, very difficult world. But one thing that we need to realize, it's very difficult to decouple. When it comes to technology, the innovations, right, the science world, everybody wants to just collaborate and envision the joint future for humankind. A good friend of mine is a professor in the American University. He's also a professor here in the University of Hong Kong. He is overseas Chinese in the AI field. And, scientists just want to resolve the issues that are preventing basically potentially going to drive humankind into extinction, such as our biases, such as AI, whatever, taking over the world, taking over certain functions, us destroying our environment, etc. They want to tackle those together. Politicians have a very different incentives. Business people have a different incentive again. Business people just want to make money and add value, So when it comes to ChatGPT-like systems, one thing we need to realize is that from the scientific standpoint, there will be some exchange, there will be some learning, but they are creating for different environment. China today, internally, is creating for the local environment. Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, they're all creating for China first. And then there's the rest of the world. And will Chinese participate in boosting what's happening in the rest of the world? Absolutely. Will there be some foreign companies that invest what's happening in China? I am not so sure. That's on that level. When it comes to business level, we will very unlikely see platforms that will work across board. So even with earlier you said TikTok. I mean, a Chinese company, a social media platform, e-commerce operator, and they are right now being blocked in the US, and the hardware manufacturer Huawei, even though they are primarily in B2B business, they do they do operate factories, and they are in a completely different business, but they do have this consumer product, and they want to provide high quality phones and other software, and they also of course are being blocked. Their consumer product is being blocked, and of course their 5G stations and whatever other stations are blocked as well. So will there be a scenario where some company from, let's say, Netherlands now becomes number one in Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, China, US, and I don't see this happening. Will there be a Chinese company do the same? No. So they will create for their own unique environments, and they will be good for that purpose. So business people will have to use different solutions, but they will learn from each other. So tech companies will learn from each other because, as I said before, scientists just want to resolve the problems, and they will have to do it very discreetly. And you were saying, what about the public regulations? So the way China operates is very different from the way kind of the rest of the world operates, often because China has this big vision. And every 5 years, China announces the big vision, the 5-year plan. This is where we're going. That's what we're going to do. And every single year since the beginning of 1950s, China has delivered all of the kind of promises, all of the KPIs that they set for that 5-year plan, every single one. So if we want to know what is China going to do when it comes to technology in the next 5 years, it's not you don't need to be a fortune teller. It's not a surprise. All you need to do is go to the 5-year plan, and it's very clearly written that China is focusing on AI. China is focusing on building virtual worlds and, metaverse, blended reality, blah, 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 kind of solutions. China is focused on making sure their semiconductor capabilities are way above where it is today because blah, blah. So it's all clearly stated. And once the government sets the direction, there's a lot of flexibility below when it comes to tech companies, state-owned companies, brands and consumers on how to get there. But ultimately, everybody's aligning into that direction. And sometimes they can run towards this goal. Sometimes they can walk towards this goal. Everybody has different capabilities. If you cannot walk or lie to yourself, you can just lie in the direction of your goal and look there. That's also okay. But everybody has the same direction. So ChatGPT, to answer your question, but in a very kind of elaborate and long way, like solutions will be definitely developed in China. They will definitely be different from what the West so collectively came up with. They will definitely be a lot more curated because you cannot really control what they are saying. It's a native language model. And this is a big problem. So who's going to take responsibility? Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a news report in China that was generated by ChatGPT. It was like a news push that said something about, I do not know, police. I forgot what exactly it was about. Something like police in a certain place was giving out XYZ things. It was totally fake. But people actually reacted to this if it was true. And then basically the person had to come forward and say, oh, it is ChatGPT generated stuff. So it was a big, big, big buzz saying, oh my God, this actually can generate fake news that people believe and people, are moved by. There will be some form of this AI-driven solution. And already today, China implements a lot of these things. We can call them deep fakes. We can call them, well, in China, we call them personal AIs. Even on CCTV, when it comes to presenters, you can make your own virtual clone, right? And essentially, a couple of their anchors are fully replaced by a virtual anchor, and they deliver news on sports and on some other, topics. Later on, it will be used more and more in entertainment, in live streaming. We already have on platforms such as Alibaba customer service assistants that are personal, with whom you can chat. Not like ChatGPT, but still you can chat with them, and there's a real person, and it looks like a real person, right? And when they reach their complexity, they don't know how to answer your question, etc., they switch to an actual real person to answer you and stuff like that. So all that is happening, but it's not going to be open. It's not going to be unregulated. It's not going to be Wild West. It's not going to be the Western style ChatGPT like systems. It's going to be a lot more controlled. It's going to be implemented through in entertainment, in e-commerce, in content creation fields, quite a lot, plus many others. So I'm excited about it, to just watch what is China doing, because the West can also learn stuff from China. Like, we can disagree with each other on a lot of topics, but one ability we shall not ever, 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 ever lose is the ability to learn from each other, to look beyond it and say, you know what, I disagree with Greg on XYZ, but I can learn from Greg these things. And ultimately we rise together and we become better together.
Wow, that was an inspiring take on things. I imagine the situation when I'm talking to a cool virtual hologram of assistant on some website, and then a boring real guy joins in to help, and I'm like, no, give me back my futuristic virtual assistant. That's what the future is going to look like. Ashley, thank you so much for your numerous insights. I hope that we will record part 2 once I'm in Hong Kong, maybe in several months. If you, my subscribers and listeners and watchers of this podcast, like this one, please drop a comment saying that you would like part 2, and we will think about it. Check out Ashley's social profiles and links to her companies in the description. I'm Greg Mazdrid. See you.